All right. What's up, everybody? It's Michael with League of Items, and today I'm gonna look at the teams that are gonna play in the upcoming show match between Korea and China. So there are a few different things I want to do. This will probably all be pieces of different videos that come out in the next few weeks while we wait for the big match. But it's also a good time to kind of figure out how I feel about these teams headed into next season. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's different for next season, like the patch and stuff like that. But it's always good to kind of refresh your memory on teams and figure out where you think they're going to line up with each other in the future. So first, we're going to look at teams based off of the following criteria. So we have recent performance in this meta and patch, which I'm not sure what patch they're going to play the show match on. Do they have a carry jungler, and are they good at multiple playstyles? So I think this is, for the most part, pretty self-explanatory. Recent performance is important, but it's not going to be what wins you a match. It might make you feel better about picking a team, but it's also going to make other players feel more apprehensive when they're trying to figure out what team am I going to bet on, which team am I going to include in my DraftKings lineups, because recency bias and stuff like that. So it's a good thing to keep in mind, because you know that either you can take advantage of it if it's too negative, or you can avoid it if it's too positive. Next is performance in this meta and patch. So the reason I want to look at this specifically is for a few different reasons. So I think a team like JDG, this patch was perfect for them because it allowed Kanavi to really be the most important player on his team. I think that teams just didn't adapt well to that kind of play style. I think there are ways to beat it. I think that none of the teams did a good job playing against it. And I expect that in the future, with all of the information out there available on JDG at this point and all the film, I think that they're not going to be able to do as well moving forward. Now, I could be wrong. I could be underrating Zoom and Kanavi. But I just think that based off of traditional League of Legends and having watched it for so long, I just don't expect their performance to continue at such a high level, which is not to take anything away from them, but I just don't see it. I don't see them being a new super team. I'd be shocked if they did as well next split. So next up is carry jungler. Carry jungler and just having a better jungler than your opponent is extremely important. Anybody who's watched my videos for a long time knows that one of the main things that I look for when picking underdogs is, do I think the jungler is better or can win in the early game and kind of snowball a game? That's one of the most important things, because if you can't even convince yourself in a theoretical situation oh yeah, their jungler can get ahead of the other jungler, then you shouldn't pick that team, just ever. And then last but not least, probably the most important, is multiple playstyles, which is also meta resilience. So moving from patch to patch, how consistent are they and how strong they are. And that's something that I think is just as important as the carry jungler portion. These two things are more recent things, the recent performance in this meta. Having a carry jungle and being able to play multiple playstyles is more important than the first 2 points, in my opinion. So I'll probably be focusing more on those, and that'll have a big impact on my rankings. So let's go team by team. Let's start with Gen G. So Gen G was in the finals. They were the regular season champions, and they lost to T1 in the finals. And I was all over this. I had picked T1. I thought that based off of the matchups from the regular season, T1 would easily be able to deal with Gen G and their preferred playstyle. And I was right. I'm not always right, but I was right a lot recently in like the past month or so with these matchups. Um, so if we look at their performance against, well, let's look at their performance on patch 10.7. So on patch 10.7, they were 2-4. They didn't play any Graves really. They gave up Graves at least once. It could have been picked a few other times, I think, just because like the teams that they were playing against didn't necessarily want to play Graves. So KT Rolster doesn't strike me as a team that wants to play Graves, which is one of the reasons why I don't like KT Rolster in general. Just not a very good team, specifically in the jungle. But Gen G, I think, is interesting for this upcoming tournament because Klid can definitely carry. He just didn't play Graves and Kindred and stuff like that in this split. But I think when the time comes that he needs to play those champions, I think that he will be able to, and he will be able to carry. So that's a good thing. Rascal, obviously, he played a ton of Ornn. We have some Silas, Set, Aatrox. Rascal's okay in general. I don't think that he is the best. He's not going to be the best top laner in this tournament. We have 8 teams, and we have a bunch of good players. So let's actually do this. I'll include these rankings as well. Jungle, mid, AD carry, support. So let's do Rascal, Klid, BDD, Ruler, and we'll just assume that Life is going to be the main player in the show match. And that's another thing that I don't like about a lot of teams is how they use multiple how they have subs. I think that having subs is probably bad in the long run, at least for like performance now, because I think there's a lot to be said about knowing what your roster is going to be and being able to plan with one team in mind and like not even have the thought of substitutes in the background. BDD is a good player. Zillion, Zoe, Silas, Azir. So we're seeing a huge emphasis on Silas. Silas is a good champion. And it's more of like a mid-game focused champion. So I guess, yeah, so they do play a lot of Silas, even on this side of things. So with Silas, it's actually the kind of champion that makes a lot of sense with Graves, or a carry jungler, because it's going to have a lot of ways to enable team fights in the mid game, and also like just imagine trying to kill Graves and Silas in the same skirmish around Rift Herald, around Dragon, between like the 8-minute mark and 20-minute mark. That just seems like a pretty tough fight. So that's pretty good. And then we see Galio. So I think Galio is an extremely good champion right now. Pretty matchup dependent. Like you don't want to blind pick him because it is sometimes a difficult lane for him going up against something like, I think Corki's probably not fun to play against. Azir is not fun to play against. And if you pick it too early in the draft, then the other team could just try to load up on physical damage and get like a physical damage mid laner. So you don't really want to do something like that. Okay. And then Ruler's pretty good, but Ruler again isn't like he's not the best AD carry in Korea right now, and AD carries have been complaining a lot recently, like kind of feeling like they don't have a lot of impact in the game. But at the same time, in professional play, when you have the option of playing Aphelios or something like that, it's tough to think that they're not impactful. So this is something that I don't want to see, Aphelios being banned blue side. So we have one time where that happened. Only one time that happened, but I think that's a mistake clearly at this point. Um, all of these AD carries for the most part are immobile, so they're the pocket passer kind of champion where they need a lot of protection. Kallista's a little bit less like that. Ezreal's pretty mobile champion. But all these other champions really need a lot of help. Kai'Sa at some point doesn't need as much protection, but uh, yeah, they do like being helped out a decent amount. But I think in general that's enough information on Genji. I think that they're a pretty good they're a good team in Korea. Definitely, they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in Korea. But on an international level, it's going to be tough to see them beating a lot of the Chinese teams in this tournament that's coming up. So I'll get more into the specifics down here when I'm going through the matchups. But just like I have okay feelings about Genji, but they really destroyed the bad teams more than anything else. All right, so T1, the spring champions in Korea, they ended up coming in second place during the regular season, right? Yeah, second place, 14-4. They have a really good read on the meta, I think, right now. They play a lot of similar champions to Genji, but they've been more focused on the jungle carry meta. Like they've been playing a little bit more Graves than Genji, and Cuz has definitely shown that he has the ability to play um, carry champions in pro play. Elim is kind of a Jarvan one. Not Elim plays a lot of Jarvan, and he also plays Kindred, so that means he can definitely play Graves. But I don't see them moving towards Elim in the show match just because they won with this roster. I would hope they stick with this roster and try to perform well in this tournament. Kana, he played extremely well throughout the entire season. He's better than Rascal. So like straight up, I would rather have Kana than Rascal. Because I think he can just carry the game harder than Rascal can. So he plays Lucian, he plays Jace, and then he can also play everything that you need him to play, like Ornn and Set, Rumble, Gangplank. So very good player, the kind of top laner that you really want because he's flexible. Whatever you ask him to do, he can kind of do it for you. Like I said, Cuz is good. I don't like the fact that they have Elim on the like. I don't like the fact that they have a second jungler, but like I said, I don't think they're gonna play him during the tournament. So then we have Faker. Faker's one of the best players in the world. Like he might not be the best mechanical player, but he's very good mechanically. And then his game knowledge and understanding of the game, being able to kind of help guide his team throughout the game, is like second to none. Like he is at least equal to Doinby in terms of understanding how to play League of Legends and helping his team kind of maneuver the obstacles that they're facing. And then the thing about T1 is when I look at their ability to play from behind, they're much better than almost every single team at playing from behind. If they played a team like JDG, I think T1, first of all, would play the pick ban smarter. And then second of all, would be able to figure out, like, okay, even though we're behind right now, this is the point that we can win the game, so let's play intelligently until this specific fight, and then we go for it at this point. If we win this fight, great, we can win. If we lose that fight, then the game is over, and we'll just play the next game. And that's important. Next up, AD carry, Teddy. Teddy is a very good carry and is enabled by his entire team. So if we see something like supports popping up in the next in that next tournament, if we see something like Karma in the mid lane or Lulu in the mid lane, it's not very popular right now, but I could see T1 trying something like that, which also makes me want to mention I'm somewhat concerned with like how serious teams are going to take it. I know that they announced that there's going to be a prize pool involved with the tournament, but I just hope that it's enough to like get the best out of all of these teams, because you don't want to see a bunch of like players trolling and stuff at an international competition, even though it doesn't have the same prestige as like MSI or Worlds. It's just never a good thing to watch. Like it decreases the value of the product. So then we have Effort. Effort had a good season. He isn't as much of a playmaker as some other supports. Like I know there are a few other supports in Korea that kind of like played out of their minds for a lot of the season in terms of like making flashy plays, but flashy plays don't win most games. Most games are determined by just like solid shot calling, setting up for objectives correctly, and not dying in lane. And Effort plus Teddy have been very good throughout the season, so I like that as well. Dragon X. All right. So Dragon X is an interesting team because from a talent perspective, they have a lot of talent. Like you have Deft. Deft is one of the like more highly sought after AD carries in the world. Piosik is a good jungler. I think that he's another player who can definitely pull off Graves. He has played it in the past. I would be pretty surprised if teams gave Piosik Olaf in general. He is a very good Olaf player. Because like I have specific games in mind where it was like Piosik on Olaf, and then his team drafted like Yumi or something like that just to enable him during like the Soraka meta. So that's another option that they have, which is very good. Keria played really well this year. I think just from like which support made the biggest impact, I think Keria is probably number one for Korea. So Deft in Korea is good. So in regards to like how they match up against other teams, they are more of a they want to be a bot focused team, I think. Chovy played really well this entire split. And he was one of the leading vote getters for like MVP. So like every game there's an MVP that's voted for, and it was like him and BDD. So I forget who won the award at the end of the season. Not really an important reward, especially when your team doesn't win the championship, but it's something that there was a lot of hype around. Next up, Damwon Gaming. So Damwon Gaming was pretty volatile throughout the season. Like they looked very good and very bad at different points. So not my favorite team. It was just like a frustrating team to watch and kind of bet on because they are just very inconsistent. Noguri is a good top laner. He's a carry top laner, which is a nice thing to have, but it's not the most important thing to have. Like in professional League of Legends right now, you need to have a very good jungler, and you need to have a very good shot caller, and you need to have a very good mid laner or AD carry, preferably both, obviously. But top laner is really like the fourth or fifth most important person on the team in general, because it's not the easiest lane to play around for many reasons. Then we have Showmaker, Ghost, and Beryl. So I'm not positive that these are the lineups that we're going to have going into the show match. I don't know if any of these rosters have made changes yet, but just based off of this since this is what I'm working with, I'm going to rank the teams with this in mind. So in fourth place, I'd have to put Damwon Gaming. I think they have some like pretty huge draft problems. They have consistently poor drafts, and that's the kind of thing that, regardless of what meta it is, if you're consistently making mistakes about which champions you leave up, then it's going to give away advantages to the other team that are pretty hard to overcome. Like obviously they can beat other teams if even if they're making bad drafting choices, but it just makes it unnecessarily harder. So I would always prefer to have the team that has the more solid draft, just because most of the time they're going to win. It's just the way that it appears to be right now in League of Legends. Third, so third I think is pretty close. I think Gen G and Dragon X are pretty close for the second place spot. I kind of just gave up the rankings right there, but I think that I'm gonna have to go with Gen G as the third best team from Korea. The main reason I think this is because both Dragon X and T1 have good records against Gen G, and that makes me think Gen G is very good at beating the bad teams, but is able to be figured out by the good teams. That's basically the main reason for them being ranked third. They might have better matchups against some of the Chinese teams than Dragon X will, but I think if I'm just looking at these teams compared to each other without looking into the matchup matrix and stuff like that, I think as a starting point, I'll have Dragon X above them. The other reason is because I think that Chovy and Deft on the international stage, specifically Deft has a lot of experience in these environments. Not only did he play in China, he's been to multiple world championships and is just an extremely good player. I think that can't be like I don't like leaning on experience as being a differentiating factor between two teams, but when one team has the head-to-head matchup, a better record in the head-to-head matchup, and has more experience and has better drafts in general, and probably fits the meta better, then I'm gonna prefer that team. So for that reason, I have Dragon X as my second best team, and then number one has to be T1. I think that they're easily the most meta resilient team in Korea. That's why they always look good. That and their organization is just really well put together. They have a good scouting team that can find these players that translate well into their system. Like there hasn't been as much talk about system players. Like I know in the NFL, people say that like players can only fit in certain kinds of systems because of their skill set. There haven't been any real cases of that in League of Legends where it's like demonstrable, but there's probably something going on there. Like when you have a player as good as Faker on your team, it's a lot easier to plug in players because there's so much attention paid to the mid lane. And that's why I think the pairing of Faker with Teddy is just extremely good. Like there are better AD carries in the world than Teddy. So this isn't a perfect roster by any means, but they've been playing really well together. And I think as time goes on, and if they have a good performance in this tournament, I think that they'll be looked at seriously as a contender for the World Championship. And T1 always is in the mix for a World Championship because, like, you can't... It's extremely difficult to make an argument like, oh, T1 isn't good enough, or T1 doesn't play this specific play style as well as other teams, or like T1... they're just that kind of team where you never want to count them out and you always just assume that they have a chance to win. So next, let's go to LPL. And I'll try to stick to the criteria a little better for this one. But like I said, this is going to come into play more when we're doing like the matchups and everything. And I'm going to do the combined rankings last. So Invictus Gaming, the number one seed from the regular season. I've talked about this a bunch of times, and I feel like every time I talk about Invictus Gaming, I just feel even more like correct about Invictus Gaming. I think they're an extremely good team, and I know that their playstyle is infuriating to watch, but it's a good playstyle. It's tough to watch sometimes because you know that they're just giving up a lot of kills, and even when they're winning, it looks kind of sloppy, but you're not you're not given a win or a loss based off of how clean you play. You are judged primarily off of killing the Nexus, and it's just funny because the Shy is like easily one of the best top laners in the world. Even when he looks like garbage, he can pull off things that other players just can't do. Like it's difficult to explain. But like I would rather watch the Shy play than almost any other player in the world. He's one of the most exciting players to watch, and he has those extremely high highs and those very low lows, and he's not going to be like your like uh down the middle kind of top laner. But that's what I love about him, because if you look at some of these matchups, like if you had the Shy against Doran or the Shy against Rascal, the Shy could exploit either of those matchups. I don't know how he would do against Kana. I don't know if he's that much better than Kana in terms of like a carry versus carry lane, but we're gonna find out, because I think a lot of these teams are gonna just go for it in the show matches, because it really is just like a show match. It's not like a super serious tournament outside of the fact that there's money on the line. The Shy versus Nagari is going to be interesting, and the Shy versus Kana is going to be interesting. Those are two matchups that I think are going to be a lot of fun to watch. So there's a big question mark in jungle. I don't know who they're going to play, and it fundamentally changes what I think about Invictus Gaming, because I don't like Leon. I don't like his play style or his champion pool. So he plays things like Kiana jungle, which was extremely powerful during the Kespa Cup in the off season. Or no, not the Kespa Cup. But during the off season, like things like Kiana jungle at the end of last season and this season, Kiana jungle was strong. He's a very good Lee Sin player, but as we've seen in EU Masters and like the LPL playoffs and LCK playoffs, Lee Sin doesn't have a very good win rate, because eventually he falls off, and it's kind of a one-trick pony where it's like, okay, well, we didn't snowball out of control, so now Lee Sin is just going to look for some kind of flash kick and like send a carry into the team. But teams know that at this point. It's not sneaky, so it's tough to kind of feel comfortable with him as your jungler in a tournament like this. Now, I don't know what they're going to do. He is very young. Maybe he's the kind of player that they just feel like they're going to keep him around for the long haul, no matter what. I have no idea. I don't follow like the Chinese news. I can't read any of their news, so I don't really know what the team's feelings are on him. Which is not to say that he couldn't figure it out and play Graves or play Kindred or some of these other champions that I want to see their teams playing. But if you're going to play that much Lee Sin, it is kind of scary. This might be the environment where Lee Sin can just get picked all the time and carry games really hard. But it's not really... I don't want that to be plan A. So Rookie is one of the best mid laners in the world. He is unique in that he will always look for fights in the mid lane. So like that's why I think the Shy and Rookie play so well together, is they're always looking for fights, and that's probably the other reason why hey, what's up, Q? Oh no, he's been losing all his money. Sad world. Did you play the teams that I liked for the last slate? Because I played them and I missed out on like a qualifier by like 3 points again, so that was fun. But like I was saying, so for the Shy and for Rookie, I think they really need a jungler that isn't going to be on something like Kiana, just because it makes it so much more difficult to play. They really need somebody that's going to continuously gank their lanes and be ready for the high volatility that they bring to the game. Puff and Southwind. Oh no. In LoL I got a good ROI, but in KBO, yeah, that's what happens, man. Korean baseball. Tough scenes. So for IG, their bot lane is really kind of not the weak part of their team, but it's kind of the weak part of their team. They're not given a ton of like resources, and not a ton of attention is paid to the bot lane. And I feel like that's kind of how it was a few years ago when they were very good. And it is sort of how it should be when you have the Shy and Rookie on your team. But that's probably another reason why they don't. That's probably another reason why they don't look great all the time, is because their bot lane just isn't playing correctly around the rest of the team. So they lost to FPX getting Aphelios and stuff like that. That's kind of not great. It could just be, some of it could be pick ban issues that people just don't really pay attention to because they know how good the players are, and you want to see the Shy on a carry champion, you want to see a Rookie on a carry champion. That might make something like Aphelios just not a good pick on their team, because that means you have like between 2 to 3 champions who need a lot of attention. So maybe that's something to look out for. Maybe he can play more supportive AD carries like Ashe or something like that. I think Senna would be very good for Invictus Gaming. That would probably be one direction that I would try if I was Invictus Gaming, is just like focusing on getting Senna, because if you could get Senna, then you'd be able to provide additional support to the Shy and Rookie, and then have like a really tanky champion in the bot lane. So that is something that I didn't see very much, and obviously it gets banned out a lot. So that's enough on Invictus Gaming. JDG, the champions. I have continuously picked against JDG, and it lost me money. But I do think that Zoom and Kanavi are very good players, but the rest of their team, I'm not convinced. That's really what it comes down to. I think they've been winning in very similar ways for most of the last 20 games or so, which makes me skeptical about their continued performance. Zoom can play basically anything. Kanavi can play anything. With Kanavi, it stinks because Kanavi is the kind of player that I would absolutely love if everybody didn't love him so much. Like, he's getting so much attention because this was the perfect meta for him. He's playing Graves, he's playing Kindred, he's playing Elise. Nidalee is not like the best champion right now, but she falls in line with that playstyle. And then even Lee Sin, he's gotten away with. He's played some Sylas and Rek'Sai. So he's playing a lot of great champions that you want to see your players carry on, and he's carrying. So he's doing everything that you're asking for him to do. And my skepticism doesn't come in from like them not being able to continue playing this way. I just don't think that teams are going to allow them to play this way. Like, I want to see T1 versus JDG, and I want to see what kind of strategy T1 has to deal with JDG. And once that happens, I think JDG could fall off a cliff, because they're going to put together the blueprint for how to beat JDG, I would assume. I am now a Zoom believer. That little fat guy is tough. Yeah, Zoom is good. Kanavi's good. I'm not saying that they're not good. I'm just saying I would be shocked. Like, if we played these series again, like against FPX and against Top Esports, I would be shocked if they beat either of those teams again. Not again. Like, I don't think that they're huge underdogs against those teams, but I really do think it's 50-50-ish, but I would prefer the other side. Like, it's probably 55-45 or 60-40 for Top Esports or JDG. Top Esports or Fun Plus Phoenix over JDG. And that might be somewhat controversial because obviously JDG just won the championship, but the more time teams have to devise plans against JDG, the less effective they're going to be. And that's what comes into like recent performance. Obviously they're great. Performance in this meta, obviously that's great. They have the carry jungler. But my question is, do they have multiple playstyles? So maybe I'm being a little unfair in weighting the multiple play styles so high because like I am just so skeptical of this team. But like if we go back to this point in time, like was everybody saying, "Oh my God, Kanavi is the best player in the world. Kanavi is the best jungler in the world," or is it that he just a lot better when he has his top laner um, being one of the best top laners in China? That's really what it comes down to for me. So if I was one of these other teams playing against JDG, I would ban out Graves, I'd ban out Kindred, I would probably ban a third jungler, and then I'd pick a jungler with my first pick, and then I would just see what happens. I think the other thing is I think that Faker specifically would be able to help beat the opposing jungler. I think that is something that's definitely possible by picking something that other players just aren't expecting. Um, a secret day trader. Great job on the EU Masters view. Big brain champion. Thank you. I do wish I made that almost perfect lineup video because I would have had the double dog lineup because I would have double dog Derry to play the double dogs and it would have been correct. But I mentioned it all the same, so I think that counts. That's enough on JDG. Obviously, a very good team. Put them in any other country, and they're probably a top 2 or 3 team. Specifically in China, though, you have two like very good teams other than them. So that just makes me skeptical for like the next split. Fun plus Phoenix, the world champions. I was pretty upset that they lost to JDG because I was really banking on them figuring out how to beat JDG. It was funny because in the first game they left open Graves, they lose, then they ban Graves. It's like, well, yeah, you should have. You should have banned Graves, obviously. So very good team. Gimgoon and Khan. I don't know who's gonna play. I honestly have no idea. Tian is a good player. Doinb is a great player. LWX and Crisp. There aren't a lot of like standout performances on Fun Plus Phoenix. They just seem to play the game correctly as a team, and that's why it's difficult to see them losing to a team like JDG again, because I think Doinb is better than Yagao, and I think LWX is better than Loken. So are Kanavi and Zoom that much better than Gimgoon and Tian or Khan and Tian? And I would say no. I think that the talent discrepancy is larger in the other lanes. Now, the one thing I should have mentioned with JDG is like Lumel played out of his mind in that last game when he was barred. Like that was really cool. That was a great performance by him. But I think he might actually be better than Crisp. Q said El Yoya is the worst Graves player I've ever seen. Literally had him twice and played supportive. Yeah, that was pretty weird. I know that is not how I expected that match to go. Gave up Graves twice. They lost one of those games. Yeah, not good. If he gets it again, I would still expect him to do well on it because it's really not a difficult champion to play at all. But for one reason or another, his team just didn't play around it correctly, or maybe he was doing something wrong, or the shot calling was bad. But yeah, EU Masters on Saturday. That should be interesting. I'll have another video out tomorrow for that. Once DraftKings releases all the salary information and stuff. Last up, Top Esports. Top Esports, I think, is going to be the best team in China next split. Now, I understand that they lost. I get it. But they just look so good. Like, it just makes so much sense in my brain that they should be able to beat JDG and Fun Plus Phoenix. Maybe I'm valuing Karsa too highly, but I think 369 versus Zoom. 369 showed that he can go head to head with Zoom. I don't think 369 is as good as Zoom, but he's very close. The whole Zoom being the best top laner in the world is like just wrong. From recent performance, yes, but in terms of like just being that good of a player or that much better than all these other top laners, I think we'll see that it's not the case in this tournament. So then we have 369. We have Karsa. Karsa is a very good player. He has been to a ton of different world championships, and he plays a lot of the champions that you want him to. The problem is that they're banning Graves when they're blue side, and that is bad for this meta, but hopefully that won't be bad in the future. A secret day trader says Karsa losing his magic. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case, and it really shouldn't be. He does play a lot of champions really well, but when you get into the playoffs, you want to consistently play like the champion that you think that you're the best at. And if you're playing against a team like JDG, so against Invictus Gaming, I think Lee Sin's a great pick because he's going to be able to skirmish throughout the entire game. In a matchup against World Elite, same thing. You can continuously fight, so Lee Sin is better. When you get into a matchup against like T1, you don't want to play Lee Sin. They're just going to destroy you because they know how to outscale it. Well, everybody knows how to outscale it, but T1 will actually outscale it for the most part. The main reason why I love Top Esports is because of Knight and Jackie Love. I think Knight had like if Kanavi if we weren't in a jungle heavy meta, I think Knight would have been the most important player for any team, or the most surprising player for any team. Like Knight was obviously always. Anyone else having trouble with the video? It's frozen. Is this for subscribers only? Nope. You might if you're having trouble with the video, you should probably put it onto a lower resolution or something. When is the show match and what channel will it be on? The show match is going to be at the end of May. I think it's the 28th to the 30th or something like that. And it's going to be on Twitch and YouTube, I would assume. Maybe they might actually get it on to national television again, but I'm not sure. I didn't hear anything about that. So Top Esports, like I was saying, Knight. I think Knight is one of the best mid laners in the world. It'll be interesting to see how I list him on this, because there are a lot of good mid laners, obviously, but I think he'll be pretty high up there. Jackie Love. So Jackie Love is another player similar to Kanavi, where I was very high on this player, but then the public sentiment just got out of control, where they were like, "Oh my God, Jackie Love is like the best player in the world." Just the whole Jackie Love saga. This split was kind of weird. Because at first it was like, oh, I don't know, Top Esports, they might not be as good. They're having a new player. Like, does he have synergy with the rest of the team? And hopefully you all listened to me and realized that was bullshit. And then we have Jackie Love playing better. Everybody's like, oh my God, Jackie Love is the most amazing player in the world. He can shot call so amazingly. Like, he changed all of the team's problems. He's the best. And that was a little overblown as well, obviously. Very good player, but just they were talking about him hyperbolically. And then we get to the finals and they lose, and I'm sure when we get into the show match, they're probably going to be saying stuff like, oh, Jackie Love was playing so well all season, but then he got to the finals and he kind of choked. Like, is Jackie Love capable of winning another world championship? Like, I don't know, maybe he just has a mental block. And it's just dumb garbage that they'll just be saying, and it'll just make me very frustrated. And then we have Chow Chow and Yu Yanjia. I would expect Chow Chow to be the support moving forward. I think I think that they probably chose him because of champion pool for the finals, but I would expect them to pick one moving forward because, like I said, I think that having two players in one role means that you have no players in one role. That's like an old football thing that most people agree with about like quarterback specifically. So in the LPL, I know what I want to do for this ranking, but I feel like I'm just going to get screamed at. If we're looking at recent performance, JDG has to be number 1. If we're looking at performance in this meta and patch, JDG has to be one of the top teams. If it's do you have a carry jungler, they're probably the best team in China for that reason. And then multiple play styles, huge question mark. I have no idea. I just have no idea. So I think if I'm being honest with myself about how I feel about these teams, I would say like it's so tough. China is so tough. It's so tough. Cuz I think all 4 of these teams are better than Damwon Gaming, Gen G, and maybe Dragon X. Like the matchups will look interesting and the games will be close, hopefully, but it's just super tough. If I had to rank them in China right now. Okay, so I would say I think Invictus Gaming is 4th. There's a lot of mobility in this side of things. I think any of these teams, depending on the meta, could be the best team. For 3rd, I have to put JDG. Like I just have to. I definitely think that from the eye test, they've played amazingly well recently. They probably have the best jungler out of the 3 teams, but as teams see more film on Kanavi, I expect that there are things that are going to pick up on that they can try to exploit in the early game. Because if you're a carry jungler and you can get put behind, then it's going to be a much more difficult kind of game to play. So I think when you're in an international tournament, you get a lot more invading and stuff like that to try to edge out these really small advantages in the early game. It's tough. It's really tough. Like I hate to put JDG 3rd because I think that all 4 of these teams are so close. But if I'm being honest with myself, I just have to. FPX is 2nd and Top Esports is 1st. So before we go any further with the matchup matrix, let's do this. So let's just do this really fast. Well, not really fast. We'll take our time. We'll do this correctly. Let's go one by one. So maybe I'll do this in tiers instead of in order. Let's see what it looks like in order first. So if I'm ranking, let's just assume that it's Khan. I think Khan is better than Gimgoon in general. I think the 2 worst top laners are Rascal and Doran. I think that the Shy has got to be up pretty high. Zoom has to be up pretty high. I don't think he's better than the Shy though. He is better than Noguri, I think. Noguri, and that's pretty similar. I think Khan's most likely better than them. Khan. I think this is pretty fair. If I had to pick a top laner for this tournament, and like I was trying to win the tournament, I would probably just pick the Shy because he's extremely volatile and I love that. Maybe that's not fair. these three are really close. Like Khan is mostly in terms of potential, so like we haven't seen it recently, but Khan was one of the best top laners in the world last year. So maybe it feels bad to put him underneath Kana. He is kind of a question mark. So the Shy and Zoom are basically even. Kana is he? I think Kana has the chance of being just as good as Zoom. In terms of being better than Khan, he's definitely not more practiced. He's had more like stage time than Khan recently. He's played in more serious games recently. It doesn't mean that he's necessarily better. So these are the two best top laners in this tournament, in my opinion. These are the two next best in terms of potential and recent performance and stuff like that. And then we have the rest of the top laners, in my opinion. Let's do this. So in the jungle, we have Kanavi. We have Cuz. I do like the junglers from Korea a lot. I think that these guys are probably all the same. Not a huge fan of Canyon. Question marks are like Leon or whatever. Leon or Ning. I'd put them down there. I don't like what I've seen for this meta specifically. Tian and Karsa. I think Kanavi. Even if you want to give Kanavi like the being the best jungler in this tournament right now, I don't. He's probably not. It's probably like his best playstyle on this patch is better than everybody else's, but we should probably color code this. Tian, I'm not so sure about. I need to watch more Tian. Those are the two worst. So I think this is really what it's like. Karsa's questionable. Tian is questionable. I really do like these three junglers though from Korea. I think that when you see a Korean team play against a Chinese team, you'll realize that more than just like being a carry, there are other ways to play the game than just being a carry player. EU Masters and the Chinese League and Brazil and all that kind of stuff, it's kind of distorting what a jungler should be doing because of the meta that we're in right now. That's all I have to really say on that. So there is a gap between Rascal and Doran and everybody else. Just not impressed from what I saw from them this year. Or this season, or whatever you want to say. Okay. So BDD and Chovy both played really well this year. I think they're both definitely better than Showmaker, so I think it's like this pretty easily. And then we have everybody else. So the mid lane is so similar between teams. I think that it's really splitting hairs when you get up to this point, but let's try to split hairs anyways. If I had to pick a player to win a tournament right now, I'd pick Faker. That's just maybe that's a fault of that. Maybe that's just a problem with the way that I look at things. But I think from a consistency basis, like it's like in soccer. Like if you can lock down the midfield and you have a strong spine on your team, where like your central defenders are really good, your midfield is really good, your goalkeeper is really good, then you can put a lot of different kinds of players around them, and it's all going to work. So Faker is like that core for your team that is going to be that's going to allow you to be flexible between metas. Doinby is an extremely good player, and he is probably another player that's more similar to Faker in the terms of like being a core player and allowing his teammates to really shine. So from like a style perspective, maybe I would put him there. Knight has been amazing this year. I think Rookie's probably better than BDD and Chovy. But like I said, these are all very close. BDD and Chovy they played really well, especially in Korea, and it's not an easy league to be a mid laner in because of the importance of the position. But I'm pretty happy with that list. I don't think Puff is that good. I don't think Loken is that good. It's tough. 80 carries. The thing with 80 carries and mid laners is that like everybody knows what to expect from an 80 carry at this point, and if you put any of these 80 carries into the position to like carry a team fight, they're all able to do it. So then it comes down to like who is the most consistent and like those kinds of things where it's all kind of splitting hairs. So I really do think that besides Puff, I think all of these players are all basically the same, but Puff is probably the worst 80 carry that's going to be at the tournament. And then for supports, it's really tough to differentiate between supports in terms of ability, just because basically the same things are expected of all of them. Like, if you want to go recency bias, Lumao played the best. He had some great performances on Bard, but I don't think there's a huge difference or a noticeable difference at this point. So I would probably just leave it like this. No glaring issues. I mean, this isn't in order. This is just one tier. I think that the main points of separation, I think that the Shy, since he's a carry top laner, he gives his team like a fundamentally different way to play the game. So if this tournament turns into a top carry meta, which it will most likely not, that basically never happens, I would expect Invictus Gaming to win. And maybe that's my way of saying that he shouldn't be number one. But just based off of skill, I think he has shown that he's the kind of player that I think gives a lot of credence to the idea. Well, one of the ideas that I've had about like how to use your solo laners, where one should be the aggressive solo laner and the other one should be more flexible in like going into the lane that needs to go even, and then playing around your aggressive lane and letting them create the lead for your team. I think we will eventually see that in League of Legends. It's just no teams have done it yet. So let's look at let's not look at the combined rankings. So T1 versus Gen G. I think Kana is better than Rascal. Cuz and Clid are very close. Clid's probably better. Clid's a great Olaf player. So he probably won't get that. He can play Graves, he can play Kindred, he can play all those champions. Very good player. I prefer Faker over BDD. I prefer Teddy over Ruler. And then supports are probably a wash. In their matchup against one another in the finals, T1 just absolutely destroyed them. I think that T1, when they're playing against another very good team, they just bring it to another level. It's not the most exciting to watch, but they do things the way that you're supposed to do them, and it's tough to criticize them for that. T1 versus DRX, when they played against DragonX, same thing. They forced teams into making bad decisions. DragonX forced a couple of Barons and stuff like that, forced a bunch of fights that they shouldn't have, and they won easily. T1 versus Damwon Gaming, I don't think it's even close. Yeah, just don't think it's close. So now we're getting into the interesting part. T1 versus JDG. So Kana versus Zoom. The public is going to say that JDG has an advantage in top and jungle. I think they might, but it's not as big as you would think. I think that SKT has the advantage in mid lane and the bot lane, which will, in the long run, over more games, will prove to be more important than having a strong top half of the map. Because all T1 has to do is go even in top and jungle, play around Dragon, play around Rift Herald, and they'll be fine. So if I had to pick a game between T1 and JDG, I would pick T1 every time. In a best of one, it's a lot more volatile. So things like blue side become more important. But in a match over multiple games, I would pick T1 over JDG every time. I think that the line that would be posted is probably 50-50 or even favored on the JDG side, just thinking that the public wants them to be the better team or wants them to beat T1. But I think the smart money would be on T1. And maybe I could have that completely wrong. Maybe the book says everybody knows T1, everybody thinks JDG is a fluke, and then everybody would bet on T1. So it depends on where the money goes in on that one. But yeah, I think T1 would win. T1 versus Top Esports. I'll just give them the victory over Invictus Gaming. I think T1's better than Invictus Gaming. Because Invictus Gaming kind of reminds me of a better version of Damwon Gaming. Because they have the top that can carry the game. Noguri and the Shy. Like, Noguri wants to be the Shy. So T1 against Top Esports and Fun Plus Phoenix. This is where it gets interesting because I think both of these teams have players that are good enough to play multiple play styles and be flexible if we move away from the carry jungle meta. Like if we start seeing a lot of bans in the jungle specifically. So I'll leave those empty for now. We'll see how I feel about them versus everybody else. So I think Genji loses against T1, loses against Dragon X. We saw that during the regular season. For one reason or another, Dragon X just was able to beat Genji pretty consistently. Genji had a losing record against both of those teams during the regular season. Genji versus JDG. They would lose that. Yeah, I think Genji. How does Genji beat these other teams? So for Genji, they would need to get Clid on advantageous matchups against Kanavi in every single game, and then just force that issue, and hopefully play the macro game really well. But I think that we've seen a lot of issues with Genji when they're playing against good teams, so that kind of concerns me for this kind of tournament. Genji against Top Esports. So Genji could beat Top Esports. And it could just be the same thing where Clid plays better than Karsa. So these are pretty close. FPX versus Genji. I think Fun Plus Phoenix is definitely better than Genji. The fact that they don't have their top lane figured out is kind of scary, but not scary enough. Dragon X versus Genji. Dragon X versus T1. They lose to them. They beat Genji. They can't play themselves. I think they beat Damwon Gaming. Dragon X against JDG. Loss. I do think that the Chinese teams are just better than the Korean teams in general. Dragon X against Invictus Gaming. Is Dragon X that much more consistent than Invictus Gaming? Well, I think they could just play through bot lane. Damwon Gaming. I think Damwon Gaming is the worst team at this tournament. So that's how I would pick it. I mean, I would think that they're going to be an underdog in all their matchups. JDG against T1. I already have them losing that. Win, win, win. This is where it gets tough. because I think these are all pretty much toss-ups. Top esports is a question mark. Win. Yeah, Q, I get it. They didn't look amazing, but it's like, would you rather have a team that can look sloppy but has an extremely high upside, or would you rather have the more consistent team? Invictus Gaming is better than RNG for like, because they have a fundamentally different play style. Like like watching I know that watching Invictus Gaming can be frustrating, but Invictus Gaming versus RNG, like, let's just make sure we're talking about everything the right way. So in the top lane, the Shy is definitely better than Longshi. I think that XLB is not as good at, well, XLB might be better than Leon or Ning. Um, hey, what's up, Gelati? We've never talked about League of Legends, but we probably should. Xiaohu is probably just as good as Rookie. I think Xiaohu's great. Like he would be in the mix for all these other with all these other mid laners. You can't say that about a lot of other mid laners in the world. In the bot lane, so they didn't have Uzi, and it seems like they're not going to have Uzi. So I think Betty's probably better than Puff. So we have an advantage in top lane to Invictus Gaming, and an advantage to RNG in the jungle, probably an advantage. It's even in mid lane, an advantage to RNG in the bot lane, probably. So they like they're both frustrating to watch, yes, but for different reasons. I think when you're watching RNG, they're trying to get their bot lane in a position to carry the game. Gelati said, Xiaohu had a good season, not on the same level as Rookie, Knight, Doinby, and the Elite guys, but he's best of the rest. RNG didn't renew Uzi's contract, so he's out. Yep. Yeah. So I think in terms of like Xiaohu having a good season but not being on the same level as the Elite guys, I would say talent-wise, he is on that level, but in terms of play, he didn't play as well as them this season. So it's like the idea of like form versus class. Like, does he have the ability to be just as good as them and play just as good as them and have as good of a season or a better season than them? Yes. Did he? No. But I generally look at things from like a talent perspective and like terms of potential. So that's kind of where I'm at for that. So back to this. Top esports should probably beat Invictus Gaming, but I could see Invictus Gaming winning. So if it's tough though, because their jungle, I don't think that their jungle is good enough to really consistently beat Karsa. Karsa's better than Leon, and he's better than Ning. Fun plus Phoenix. Win. Question mark. I really do think that. Did I put this? Top esports. Invictus Gaming loss. So I think Invictus Gaming against all the other Korean teams is probably very close. I think from from talent, I could easily see Invictus Gaming being the underdog going into those matchups for some reason, and then still winning. But I think the Chinese teams will be, probably be the favorites in most of their matchups against Korea to start at least. Invictus Gaming against Genji. I have it down as a loss, but these are all really close. So that doesn't feel right to me. Like I do think that Invictus Gaming is I do think that Invictus Gaming is very good. And maybe I shouldn't. But I do. Alright. So this means the ones that we should look at specifically are these again. Invictus Gaming. Yeah, I agree with the Korean teams. I just think that the Korean teams are not as good. Like I could see them having a good tournament, but Damwon Gaming specifically, I don't think it has a chance. Genji and Dragon X, if one of them plays really well or wins, I think like coin flipping alone could get them into the finals. But ultimately, talent wins out. I think if they play multiple tournaments in a row. Okay, so JDG against Top Esports. JDG against Top Esports. So I think it's like this again. So yeah, all right. See you, Gelati. Top Esports. I just prefer having a strong mid laner and bot lane. So I do prefer Top Esports. JDG against FPX. So this is actually a very interesting matchup because I think that if they go back and think that Gimgoon, not that he was the problem, because I don't think that you could really come to that conclusion from watching that series. Like, he wasn't the problem. I think that them playing with Khan might be just a better matchup against Zoom and be able to be more aggressive in that matchup. So I think that could kind of swing things. So I think that might eliminate the advantage there. Kanavi versus Tian, I don't think that Kanavi's substantially better than Tian in all metas, but in this meta he probably is better. And then Doonby's better than Yagao, LWX, and Crisp. They're, I would think, better than Loken and Lumao, but not by a substantial amount. So it's really mid lane against the jungler. And in more metas, the mid laner will be important. The mid laner will be more the mid laner will be more important in more metas. So again, I think FPX. That's a question mark. And then we have Top Esports against Fun Plus Phoenix. So that's basically a draw. This one, I think you got to give to Top Esports. Karsa and Tiana are very similar. And this is pretty similar. So I would say Top Esports is better because they have an advantage in the bot lane. So Q, what are you talking about? The guy that was interviewing you was a LoL semi-pro in Arizona a year or so ago? Interviewing you for what? For a job? Or for something else? Because you're a musician, right? So, like, was it about music? Yeah, for a job, or yeah, for music? And who was it? Can you say who it was? Because I might recognize their name. Was a job. JDG against Invictus Gaming. I mean, I've been pretty mean to JDG, so let's just give him the win there. FPX versus Top Esports. All right, let me know. So that's that, and then these are probably the two most interesting matchups in my opinion. I think that T1 versus Top Esports. Let's see. T1, Top Esports. I think that T1 has the advantage in top. I think it's probably like this. I think Kana and Cuz are better than 369 and Karsa. I think that Faker and Knight are basically the same, but I think that most people are going to say, oh, Knight is better now for some reason. So that'll be like a potential edge to have against the public. And then Jackie Love against Teddy. People are going to say Jackie Love is better. I think it's basically 50-50. And then Chow Chow against Effort. I mean, it's really tough. You're splitting hairs with that. So I would say I would give it to T1. I would be like, when we get into this tournament, if I had to put money on who I think will win the tournament, I would probably bet on T1, Fun Plus Phoenix, or Top Esports. Whichever one gave me the best odds out of those three, I'd probably just pick that one. I think JDG isn't going to be priced correctly. Like, they probably won't have top. They probably won't even have odds for that, like winning the tournament. On most books, but something to look out for, I guess. So let's do that, and then T1 against FPX. That's just a real toss-up. I think that Fun Plus Phoenix wants to be the T1 of China in terms of like playing the game correctly and intelligently and stuff like that. So that's a really tough one to give an opinion on. So let's do the combined rankings. Whoops. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Damwon Gaming, you are the worst team. I expect you to do the worst. Now, with that being said, I think that, yeah, I expect them to be the worst. There's no need to really hedge on that one too much. If they go out and win the tournament, good job. But would be very surprising, I think. So let's do the records real quick. So 7. Wait, no. 1, 2. They have 6 W's. 2, 3, 0, 4, 6. See, because this doesn't feel right. IG, Genji, BRX, GDG. So, Top Esports, T1. These three teams, I think, should be the three favorite teams to win the tournament. Everybody else, I think JDG obviously has a chance to win the tournament. Like, maybe they're just on that much of a hot streak, which isn't a real thing. But, like, I feel like the meta is so good for them that if teams refuse to, like, ban out their champions, they could just run over another tournament. So that's basically it. I'm going to post this on YouTube. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you could, I'm going to put this out on Twitter as well. If you could retweet, I'd appreciate that a lot. Just the more eyeballs, the better. That's just pretty basic. And yeah, if you like what I'm doing, just let me know. If there's some things that you would like to have changed, let me know. If there are content ideas that you have or specific questions about League of Legends, that you want answered, feel free to send them to me on Twitter or YouTube. Otherwise, thanks for watching. This is what I think is going to happen in the LPL and LCK show match. My name is Michael. This is League of Items. And that was a review.